Hey folks, Dust here, and it's time to discuss a huge roster change that got announced in the midst of ESL 1 Cologne from a team that wasn't participating in the event, of course. That's Cloud9, a team that we've really been anticipating moves from for quite some time, ever since it got announced that Golden was being loaned out to NIP, and with all the issues that Cloud9 had, not even being able to make it to the next America's Minor, getting knocked out against teams they should not have, and different online best-of-threes, and it seemed like they had really hit rock bottom. They've been struggling for quite a long time. This team's really been in disarray since Dewey and Tarek left, and that's been ages ago, just with all the players that were in and out, like Finesse and Kiyoshima and Zelsis, recently trialing Vice, having cajunB come in, and that's just to name a few of the different roster moves that have gone on this team over the last year or so. But lo and behold, they have completely stripped this team. The only player remaining is going to be autimatic, and they've brought in daps, koosta, TenZ, and mixwell. They've also brought in coach JamezIRL. They have put Rush on the bench. Valens is moving to a data scientist role in the team, which is something he had done previously when they were trialing Rambo, but then he kind of came back to coach after things didn't work out with Rambo or what have you, but now he's going to go back to that as JamezIRL comes in. Then Golden, of course, as we already said, was moved over to NIP on loan for the major to see how he does. And Vice and cajunB have been moved to the team. I'm not sure if they're still on contract and they have buyouts or whether they're being released. They didn't really say in the official statement that Cloud9 put out on their website, so I'm not 100% sure. They just said that, we'd like to thank them for their, hard work and dedication and things like that. Can't wait to see what they'll accomplish next. So a little bit vague on whether or not they have buyouts or not, but lo and behold, yeah, changing 4 players is basically the summary. And this is pretty crazy to see this change. We definitely had been seeing reports and such float around that the team was interested in daps and TenZ. Later on, apparently koosta was seen as an interest. And most recently it was mixwell, which I think DK put out a report right before, kind of hours before the official announcement, that they were even looking at mixwell to go alongside some of the other players that had already been kind of tied to the organization, so to speak. So this is pretty crazy stuff. Some of it expected, some of it not so much. It's actually a pretty crazy change. And so we'll start with the players that were removed. So first off, with Golden being loaned out to NIP, yeah, the whole situation with Golden on Cloud9 was just a weird one. Obviously, he was out for a long time due to health issues after only briefly being on the team when he first signed on. He played a couple of events, then the health issues came. He was gone for a while. And then now he came back and things just didn't work out, and now he's being loaned out to NIP. This can always happen with European players, for one, where they want to go back to their home country. Obviously, trying to be an in-game leader in secondary language can be difficult. Obviously, having different philosophies on the game than maybe players on your team have can be difficult. And I just feel like the whole situation with him on this team was really just a false start, and the recovery just wasn't there. Don't know how much blame to put on Golden, how much blame to put on the moving parts on the team, different players that came in and out, him coming in and out in his own right. How much of it was really the reason why things didn't work out. But for whatever reason, things just simply didn't work out, and didn't really look so good with him as the in-game leader of this team. So I understand why it was maybe mutually beneficial for both parties to go different directions going forward. As far as cajunB being removed, though, this one, I don't know. I feel like cajunB could have still been useful to Cloud9 even with this roster overhaul. Like, if he was on the team instead of koosta, I wouldn't have minded so much. I think he's definitely a strong kind of role player, pretty good rifler. He was putting up pretty good numbers despite all of Cloud9's problems. Definitely has shown time and time again he can be kind of a useful support player, play the edges of the map, be a smart player, help out in the clutch, maybe help out with some secondary calling. Definitely a very intelligent guy, played under a lot of different experienced and successful in-game leaders. And so I think that cajunB could have brought great value to this new lineup, but perhaps he didn't want to stay. Maybe he wants to go back to Denmark. Definitely, the old Optic lineup and North and different organizations should be taking a look at this guy. I think he can be very useful to a team in supportive capacity. Definitely a very experienced player. Or also he could maybe wind up on some type of multinational European team. I mean, Sonny's still sitting out there, cajunB, you get those pieces, maybe a couple of others, and you might have yourself a decent international team. So we'll have to see how things go with him. As far as Vice goes, I mean, yeah, he just didn't really hack it, did he? I mean, I thought it was a weird pickup in the first place when they first brought him on. It just didn't really seem like he was going to fit. Then they put him in a weird entry fragger role, something he's never done before in his career, and that didn't really work out. And again, I can't know how much of Vice's rough times at Cloud9 are due to the environment or due to him as a player. Maybe he could be a better player somewhere else. But to be honest, Vice has been around for a while. I mean, he definitely even had chances on decent organizations. I mean, he was on a team alongside players like Twist and Sick even on TSM a while back. It didn't last very long on that team, obviously. And yeah, just doesn't really seem to be the type of player that can compete on a top North American team, especially a North American team that has aspirations to be a top 10 team in the world. It just doesn't seem like he has the skill set or the consistency to be able to do that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe with a different organization, in a different environment, he can thrive more than he did on this Cloud9 team. But overall, definitely didn't perform that well. Can understand why they didn't want to keep him and why he didn't really fit into the plans for the future. Then let's talk about Rush a little bit here. So Rush is going to be moved to the bench. I can understand why. The guy has really struggled to perform at any type of high level for a really long time now. And it saddens me to say that because I felt like Rush was so strong in 2016 with Optic, such a good entry fragger, did so well for them, created so much space, had so much impact. On Cloud9 in 2017, even when he had to kind of give up his main entry role to kind of be more of a supportive player to facilitate guys like Stewie, autimatic, Tarek, etc., he still managed to be able to find his place and help provide for the team. Even if he wasn't the star, flashy player he was on Optic, he still found a way to play a role and help the team succeed throughout mostly late 2017 and into the major, obviously, that they won in early 2018. But once the team started losing players like Stewie and Tarek and all the environmental issues that they had, he really started to slip off and he never really came back. And some of that can obviously be a product of the environment, just the instability really getting to him as a player. But there were certain points where you feel like, man, he really needs to step up and compete well, because this last night that they had where they had autimatic and cajunB, if Rush could have performed at a really high level next to autimatic and next to cajunB, maybe they could have actually done something. And you always had to kind of scratch your head on why he could never really get back to any type of form that was good, that was solid. Yeah, I can understand benching him because of that. I would have liked to see what daps could have done with Rush. Maybe he could have helped bring him back or something like that. Obviously, they know each other. They've played with each other in the past. Maybe he could have helped him recover. But maybe Rush just has to move on to a new team and kind of reinvent himself or, dig deep, take a break, cool off, whatever the case needs to be to get him back motivated and get him back on form. I'd love to see him back in form. I'd love to see him back at that level I know that he can be, but he just isn't that now. So at some degree, I can understand why Cloud9 passed on keeping him around. So now let's talk about the line that they do have now. So we'll start off pretty easy. We'll start off with autimatic, the guy that actually stays on the team. Obviously, he'd been doing a primary AWP role for a while now, just because it was a necessity for him to do so with Skadoodle leaving and then never really picking up another primary AWP. Did pretty well, all things considered, for being put into that role. Even had a couple events where he was putting up like ludicrous numbers, like, Blast and things like Blast Madrid. And, even the major, he actually put up really, really good numbers despite not being in his normal role. I think him going back to a rifling role is going to be fantastic. He's such a versatile rifler. He can do entry work. He can clean up in the mid to late rounds. You can plug him into so many different spots and he's going to be successful. He's done so many different rifling roles throughout his career. A very, very consistent performer. Definitely can be the heartbeat of this team, one of the star players of this team. Definitely probably the best North American player not on Liquid right now, besides maybe Breeze and Ethan. A couple of players on Energy you could probably put in that same category, but autimatic would certainly be up there as well. So the fact that Cloud9 maintained his presence on the roster was certainly a good move. I think autimatic could have been a valuable piece for a lot of teams. I mean, obviously Liquid's not in need right now. Energy wasn't really in need right now because they had already made their in-game leader, so that's all they really needed to do. But man, oh man, keeping on to him, definitely a great move. And hopefully now with a good team around him, he can actually finally get to do what he's been meaning to do, which is actually be a competitor on a top 10 team in the world, actually get some good results, actually feel like he's a part of a stable team that can actually do something. I mean, a lot of people have been talking about just, get this guy out, like, please help this guy, like, let's bail him out, let's get him onto another team, even if it means he has to go to like a multinational team or something even. But now that they've built this team around him, maybe he can finally, get what he deserves, which is a good team. And so we'll really leave it at that. I mean, obviously I could talk wonders about autimatic for a while, but I don't want to make this video last too long, and everybody already knows this guy's great, and it's good that they kept him on board. So daps is the really big piece to bring on board, right? The new in-game leader coming in from NRG, obviously a guy who's built up successful teams with NRG and Optic in the past, already has a lot of respect kind of in the North American scene as a very capable in-game leader. Not very much a capable fragger. Obviously that's one of the kind of cons of having daps in their team, is he's not really going to have high fragging volume. But hopefully on this team, it won't matter so much. And if we're honest, Energy was still able to be a very successful team, start moving towards top 5 status in the world, definitely a solid top 10 team. plenty of top 4 finishes at different tournaments. I mean, ECS, they had a top 4 there, including beating a pretty strong Furia team. They obviously had top 4 at CS Summit 4, only really losing to Liquid in the semifinals. You know, at times taking maps off really good teams like Ints, like Liquid in the groups, beat Ghost, beat Renegades. They had a top 4 at Sydney. They beat FaZe, beat Made in Brazil, took a map off of Fnatic. Did fine in the EPL Season 9 group stage as well. You know, Season 7 finals for Starlighter, the first event with Terrat, they got top 4 there as well, including beating Vitality and beating North and beating Made in Brazil and doing really strongly. You know, look, if you even go back into late 2018, there were several events that the team played really strongly at as well. Really the only kind of embarrassments for the Energy team was obviously not doing well at all at the Iron Katowice major. That was obviously a really, really huge slip. And the EPL Season 8 finals kind of earlier on where they kind of had, I guess, an upset loss, you could say, to Ghost, which is a little bit disappointing, but and then, yeah, their Dallas finish wasn't that great either, if we're 100% honest, which was pretty recent. But they lost to, like, G2, who's been kind of on the rise. So it wasn't terrible, but wasn't great. And, yeah, that team definitely hit its ceiling. And I've already talked about the Energy move, you know, bringing in Stanislaw for daps and why that kind of made sense, because I guess they did kind of hit a plateau. But their plateau is still really good. It's still, you know, getting top 4 finishes and being a pretty solid top 10 team in the world and even approaching top 5 status, which is far, far from where Cloud9 is right now. So if he can just get them to that level to be a strong top 10 team, a team that can occasionally get some big top 4 finishes, that would be a huge improvement from Cloud9 and a good starting point in kind of rebuilding that brand in Counter-Strike and getting them back to being a noteworthy team when it comes to, you know, international CS. So that's good stuff. He's a guy who has a very long track record of being able to come in and build a foundation for teams. And what I mean by that is having like really good default setups, you know, established roles for players, set protocols for how to approach the early and mid round and getting map control and setting up attacks. And even here, most recently on Energy, on some maps like, you know, Mirage and even Overpass, for instance, he was able to start bringing in some faster splits, some faster pace executes, some different set pieces. I don't know how much of that was daps evolving as an in-game leader, how much of that was coaching, how much of that was the fact that Terra came on the team and they needed to be more aggressive because they had so many aggressive prone riflers. Whatever the case may be, daps has shown the ability to be able to get the basics down into a team, and then you can kind of build from that. He's also done a great job kind of fostering new and young talent. You know, he definitely really did, I feel like, help players like Breeze and Ethan develop on the Energy team and kind of not necessarily turn them into great players. They're already pretty good. I don't want to take away from, you know, Breeze and Ethan working on their own and just being really talented players, but that certainly kind of helped that along, right? I mean, he definitely found roles for them, definitely helped them continue to develop as players is kind of the point, because before those players joined Energy, they didn't really have very much experience, especially on the international level, and so I think that you have to give that some credit for helping those players develop. He also has recruited talent like Cirque, like Mixwell in the past on Optic, who he gets to reunite with, so has a good recruiting philosophy, which can be good for the future for Cloud9 if they do need to make roster changes down the road. So yeah, a guy who can build a foundation, can help develop players, and can help recruit talent. That's definitely what Cloud9 needs right now. And so I think daps can bring a ton of value to this team. And if he can continue to kind of evolve how he perceives the meta of CS and kind of builds away from defaults and throws in the pacing changes, which is oh so needed now in the current CS meta. You have to kind of be a complete team, can't rely on just one style of play. I think daps is capable of rolling with that. So I think he's going to be able to bring a lot, even if he's not going to be able to frag a lot, and that could be a weak point of the team in some regards, especially on CT sides. I think that he still is going to bring so much value outside of the fragging that won't really matter as much. So that's good to see. Then we have koosta coming on board from Ghost. Now, this is a guy who obviously has a reputation that's very mixed bag, just because of how much hype he had when he was on Enemy, how poorly things went for him on Team Liquid, how mixed things were for him on CLG. And then, you know, he came on to Ghost. He's completely changed his role, more of a support rifler, more of a lurker, doesn't really do much opping unless it's secondary opping on CT side, or unless he has like a really good spawn and you kind of throw it in his hands for those like very specific moments. Definitely a guy who I don't know how I feel about him as a player, to be honest. Like, I would say when he was on Ghost, most of the lands he played up until the very end, like their last couple events like Tours, where they had to use James as a stand-in for Freakazoid, and CS Summit 4 when the team was practically already dead. and they were having issues. When the environment is pretty stable and Ghosts are making their come up, like at Zotac or DreamHack Atlanta, where they got top 4, kind of how they performed in EPL Season 8 and making it to those finals, and the occasional match they would take off of top teams and things of that nature, he actually did pretty well for his role. Like, he was actually one of the more consistent fraggers on the team outside of Wardell. So I thought he was fine. Like, he can be a serviceable role player. He's definitely not going to be a superstar. He's definitely not going to put up ludicrous numbers. He might occasionally pop off in certain maps or series, but all in all, he's there to do a job, to kind of fulfill a role, to be a flexible rifler. Again, more supportive, more of a lurk, not really going to be like an entry fragger per se, but I guess he can make a play if he needs to, if he's on the right side of the map at the right time. Again, I'm not confident in how much he's going to add to this team, to be honest. Like, maybe I think keeping cajunB would have been better, like, if it were up to me, but maybe that wasn't really the choice that they had. But yeah, I think he can do fine. Like, we'll just have to see how it goes, right? Like, I'm willing to give it a chance because I think he did do well enough on Ghost. Like, at least he fulfilled the role and did what he needed to do to help that team be as successful as it was, particularly within the North American region. Perhaps daps can find a way to kind of help him continue to develop and find ways to use him and find ways to make him comfortable. It seems like Koosta is the type of guy who can perform really well when he feels comfortable and confident. It seems like a lot of his issues are down to like mental composure rather than mechanical ability. So maybe that's something that daps and Cloud9 support staff can try to help along. Again, seems like Steel was able to find uses for him on Ghost. So this could work out. He could be a good role player for the team, but I wouldn't have been, disappointed if we would have kept cajunB or if they would have went somewhere else. But we'll have to see how it plays out. I'll leave it at that. Then the big one was mixwell, dude. This came out of fucking nowhere. I did not see this one coming at all, but I am happy to see it because I felt like he was just fucking wasting away over on Movie Star Riders, who wasn't doing a whole lot of anything. I can respect the idea after the whole multinational optic team thing didn't work out, and he kind of stood in briefly for G2 and North, and that didn't really go anywhere. That, let's try to go back to Spain and try to make something happen with Lau, who's kind of like another, Spanish player who had been a couple of more notable teams, and just see if we can do something at home. It just didn't work out, and so it's good to see him back. I mean, this is a guy who was so good for Optic through so much of 2016, that their rise, winning E-League Season 2, winning Northern Arena Montreal, taking second at that ECS Season 2 finals. Obviously, that team flopped at the major, then Stanislaw left and team went into complete chaos, but through all that chaos, mixwell still typically performed really, really well at some different events. And then when the multinational European Optic came on board, he was still, performing pretty decent. And then on Movie Star Riders, he was trying his damnedest to carry this team, but there just wasn't really a whole lot to be done there. This is a guy that wouldn't always put up monster numbers, but he always had really, really good impact. He definitely could have games where he popped off and definitely could have whole events where he would perform really, really well. Overall, a very skilled player. I don't know if he'll be the main star of this team. I feel like autimatic's more built to be that, and then TenZ hopefully has the potential to be that for this team, but I think he could be the second or third best player on this team and also be a player that has a lot of impact. I mean, this is a guy who not only can be a really strong primary operator, which I imagine what his main role will be on this team, definitely can do that very well. He's very assertive, very aggressive. He definitely takes initiative. He's not one of these passive operators or angle holding operators. He definitely can create plays for you, not just sit back. But he also is a really strong rifler, even at times toyed with the idea of being more of an entry rifler as his main role than being a primary operator. We saw it on several different occasions. I think he was kind of doing that on G2 a little bit when he was standing in for them. Can do that, and we definitely saw when Optic was at its height, in 2016 with E-League Season 2 and stuff like that, when that team was at its most dangerous was because they were able to swarm and trade frag into bomb sites just really aggressively. I mean, obviously, Rush was kind of the catalyst for that, being kind of the first guy in, maybe Stanislaw kind of being in the mix as well, but Tarek and Mixwell being kind of those follow-up players were what really made that team so dangerous. And so I can see times where, you throw autimatic Mixwell and TenZ into a bomb site and trade frag away, and even if Mixwell doesn't have an AWP, he can still be impactful. So the fact that he has that flexibility is really, really good. He's not tied down to the AWP, so to speak. He's kind of like Cirque and some of these other players who are certainly still capable with rifles in their hand. And so I think that it's going to be fantastic to see him back kind of competing against notable international teams on a team that has potential. I definitely think he can bring a lot to this team. It's obviously going to be great to see Mixwell and daps reunited. You know, daps is the guy who recruited Mixwell into Optic back in the day. I think Mixwell lived with daps for a time before he like moved into the Optic house, and so they have kind of that bond of living together, and daps kind of being that guy who brought him into the fold and gave him a chance at playing on a kind of a team that would compete at a top international level after he was just kind of playing in Spain with G-bots and stuff like that. So I think that familiarity is going to be really neat. Maybe some old Optic fans will kind of get behind this idea of seeing daps and Mixwell together again, and I think this is a good move to make. I mean, the only concern really is, you know, is there some rust there on Mixwell because he hasn't really competed at top international level in a while. Closest thing to it was like Copenhagen games. So he hasn't really played top international teams in quite a long time. I mean, the last time was probably really when he stood in for North at DreamHack Valencia and helped them win that event. And that was, you know, like a year ago, basically. So not a whole lot of experience playing top international teams on LAN, but I mean, he definitely has shown himself to be a capable player, so I'm not too concerned there. Also, obviously, last time he lived in North America, I know there was a lot of homesickness and things of that nature. You always got to worry about that. You always have to worry about importing European players to North America. How long can that really last before they want to go back home? That's always a concern as well, but definitely a big pickup. Definitely can bring a lot to this team. And then TenZ is the final player to the team. Honestly, I don't know too much about him. I mean, he's a very young player. He's just 18 years old. He just graduated high school. He has not played many LANs. He's pretty much only really played like small events like Fragadelphia and a couple of WESG events. I think he's only played 4 LANs in his entire career. And, you know, really only one of them was any kind of real international LAN, and even that wasn't really a big one. So obviously a huge rookie when it comes to playing at big events. Obviously everything he's done online so far has merited giving him a chance. Like, he's been standing in for that South African ATK team lately and some different qualifiers, performing pretty well. Stood in for Lazarus a couple of times, like for the America's Minor qualification process, did pretty well there. Played in Mountain Dew League and different things for ECS and different online qualifiers for teams like Bad News Bears and different things like that. Always performed pretty damn well. Definitely seems to be a very skilled player. Definitely seems to be a guy who has a lot of mechanical ability. Definitely can be a guy who can be kind of an secondary entry type player, which I think he'll probably be doing on this team since koosta is going to be more of a support factor. Autimatic can be so flexible. Yeah, I think that that he can really do a lot for this team. So I'm looking forward to see what he does with an opportunity like this. And then finally, you have JamezIRL coming on as the coach for this team. Definitely a guy who did a pretty good amount of work with Ghost, I think. I mean, again, it's hard to know how much of it was him, how much of it was Steel, as far as how that team was led, how good they were tactically, things of that nature. But definitely a guy who's a mind for the game, a student of the game, has worked with Cloud9 in the past as an organization, probably learned a lot from working with Steel on Ghost. Definitely seems to be a guy who puts in a lot of time and effort, does his research, scouts opponents really well. Definitely can be kind of that analyst type figure. Definitely can also be a positive force and a leadership force as well, though. So, I mean, I wouldn't have minded Valen staying the head coach of the team, but if he wanted to move to another role to support the team a different way, I think James is definitely one of the candidates out there that made sense to bring on for Cloud9. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with these changes. I think that this team has a lot of potential. I think that's being the leader, keeping autimatic, bringing in someone like TenZ, giving him a shot, bringing in Mixwell, who we know can be a really strong player, koosta, who can at least fulfill a role. This is definitely a good starting point for a new form of Cloud9, a new look for the team, and hopefully this can mean that they can finally get out of the complete spiral downward they've been on for so long and finally get back to contending within the North American region against the likes of an Energy and a Liquid, get back up to that status, and maybe turn into a top 10 team in the world and actually be an interesting team to follow. That's certainly the hope. So, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe for more content. Catch you next time.